to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I'm your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Phil Whitebloom. Phil is a nationally respected sales coach, author, and the founder of Been There Consulting Services. With over 40 years of real-world sales experience, including as vice president of sales at Sony Electronics, Phil has led teams that generated over $1.5 billion in sales. That's a B, billion with a B. He's also known for delivering instant traction, helping businesses unlock revenue fast, often after just one conversation. Phil's newest book, The Sales Fixer, is a must-read for CEOs who want to understand what's holding back their sales and fix it. Whether he's coaching on objection handling, high-impact selling, or leadership that driven results, Phil brings clarity, warmth, and tactical know-how. You can find Phil by going to his website, beentherecs.com, or by emailing him at info@beentherecs.com, or by searching him on LinkedIn at Phil Whitebloom. Hello, Phil. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Oh, it's great to be here. I have been looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to it as well. And to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Phil Whitebloom?
I could do that. I'm going to give it to you in two ways. So one is tactical success and the other is strategic success. So tactical success is when I'm working with somebody and they've been struggling in a particular area or stuck, and they achieve what they were trying to achieve relative to sales or whatever else I'm working with them on. So anytime you can make an immediate impact on somebody and they feel it and they can measure it, that's a success. That's a tactical success. The success for the strategic part is when individuals who have been getting better and better at making these short-term results, when it becomes so natural to them, now it's something they don't worry about anymore. They have taught themselves and learned how to take what they've done in the short term and just execute it day in and day out and everything else. And that's the best of all. That's like, hey, Phil, we don't need you anymore. We are doing great. And that's long-term success.
And one thing you just mentioned is you broke it up into tactical and two different groups. So tell me, for you, is there importance in categorizing those two definitions of success into those buckets for you?
Yes. So that's the first time I was asked that question. It's a good one too. So yes. So when you introduced me as a sales coach, which is correct, and so why do I say that to all of you who are listening in? Because the other one is sales training. And many businesses and individuals confuse that when they see sales coach, they immediately think training. And training is very linear, right? So they teach you get, and it's very important, by the way. And you learn how to meet people, how to get in the door, all the way through to closing, and sometimes even how to retain customers, clients, patients. And but it may not be helping you at that point in time with what you really need. So people are in business today, regardless of what it is. You're in business today. You need positive results today. And this is where the bucket comes in, that in working with people with where they are right now, what are they struggling with right this minute? And it doesn't always have to be from something bad. It doesn't have to be that we're really behind and we're really worried about our overall business. Sometimes people they've plateaued. They're already successful. They're making profits, but they want to go to the next level, and then they're stuck there. So in this bucket, these are the tactical things. In helping people, what are you working on right now that's going to have a positive result right now? And then the other one is building these skills and confidence. And confidence is key, is to take this forward all of the time. and where they don't have to think about it anymore, like learning how to drive a car or the cliche ride a bicycle, right? You don't think about it, you just get in there and do it. Same thing. So how did I do?
Good. And I think you're right. I think so many times we try to lump it into one category or encompass everything into our definition of success, right? Use keywords. And then be like, okay, well, now this has to fit over here and fit this bucket. It has to fit all the buckets, right? And then that unsure starts to set in as well. It's like, okay, but does it? And what does that mean? So breaking it up into different buckets, especially as an entrepreneur, as the tactical side, is important because so many times people forget like things should have a process and a procedure. And not only is that tactical, but it saves time. It saves, getting things wrong and the consistency of it. So you can have those reps and take the training wheels off the bike and all of that as well. And long term hit your goals. So I love how you brought up the tactical side to it as well. And
Thank you.
Talking about success and industries, as you brought up, being a sales coach and understanding where you are now with things, you yourself have led through massive industry shifts, from analog to 4K. What's one belief or mindset that helped you lead well through disruption? Because so many of us, whether it's that or other aspects, have disruption in our everyday lives or businesses.
So disruption, if you were to visualize disruption, it's an easy thing to do. It causes people, and we could talk about businesses, but it's all about the people, and it causes people to panic, and they don't want to change. And I could tell you from working with different companies and the U.S. government, and there was times when with film cameras and it was transitioning into non-linear, even before it was digital. There was an analog that was recording on discs and it was non-linear. And I remember talking with customers who said, we will never get away from film. Never, right? And so now you have a hard time finding film. And but there's real changes that happen where it changes how you do things. And one of those biggest changes going way back now was going from typewriters to word processors, which were just big machines, not an app on your phone or your computer or anything. And it was disrupting the entire administrative way of operating. And people were panicked they were going to lose their jobs, that these machines were going to take their jobs away and everything else. And I could go on and on with, today it's AI, which is really disruptive. I mean, it's major league so. And what happens is with businesses, it's always not about losing jobs. It's about embracing the value that you'll get from the new technologies. And when you go to any business owner, even a solopreneur, and you say, what aren't you getting done that's really important that you just need to find a way to get done, but it's not happening? And they will tell you, and they'll probably give you a list. And so then you ask them, well, what would you do if all of a sudden you had these resources available? And they said, what do you mean? Well, because of these new technologies, Olivia, they could enable these new technologies, which will make them more efficient, will give them time back. And if it frees up these people, you can now use them to do other things. So this new disruptive technology is not only making them more efficient in that area, it's also allowing them to use this new this resource to free up humans or other humans or somebody to get retrained and retooled to take on these other tasks that are important, and that's going to help your business overall. And this is what's really dynamic about disruption, is that you don't fight it. If it's for real, find a way to embrace it, find a way to make it efficient for yourself, because when you don't, you fall behind. And sometimes you fall so far behind you can't recover. So that's my answer.
For you as well, going through those moments of disruption, but having the real world experience, that insight, the perspective, the hey, like I got to learn this on my feet and pivot and do this and that. How do you feel that has helped you with where you are now helping others? Because it's not like you just woke up one day and said, oh, I'm going to go do this and help other people. You actually have that knowledge and backing yourself of doing it in different spaces.
So it comes down to something you may hear me talk about more than twice today, is going to be talking about asking questions and about asking what I call high impact questions, which is most of everybody's heard about closed questions, which are yes or no, and then open ended is where you have to give an answer. Well, high impact brings out the reason behind the answer or somebody's answer. And the way to do this is not to focus on the thing. It's about the focusing on what it is that you want to accomplish with this. And that's where I'm able to help. Don't get hung up on the bells and the whistles. Say, what is it that you're trying to do? Why is that important to you? You know, what is it that you're not able to do today that if you were able to do it, will make a difference, and why is that important to you? And this is magic, but it's not magic to do. Anybody could do this. And it's about listening and finding out what is that real reason behind the whys and the whys. And that's how you get to this point of helping people. It's getting them past the bells and whistles and getting them to say, oh, you could help me get this done? Oh my God, this is going to be great. And you don't have to close very many people at that point because they kind of close themselves.
And that being said, you know, a lot of people, small business owners, solo entrepreneurs, even people in growth, end up misdiagnosing what they feel is their sales problem. When you're coaching CEOs, where do you see most often those individuals misdiagnosing their own sale problems?
It happens more often than anybody would really think. And there are some common things. One of them is my people, if they have sales teams, my people are not good closers. Or if they're solopreneurs, I'm not a good closer, or I don't want to be salesy. And you know, these are the kind of things, and they're diagnosing this problem as they're diagnosing their situation with this as the problem. And more times than not, by a large margin, they're wrong. And I don't come out and say, hey, you're probably wrong. What I do is say, well, let's find out what's going on. And then through a process of discovery, like any medical person or anybody else that's out there, like even like you, Olivia, you know, you do your homework and you figure out what's going to work best for you and for your listeners and your viewers. So when that happens, then I'm able to point to what the real problem is. For example, there's one company that I work with where the president of the company and their business coach, the business coach is actually the person that brought me in because he couldn't fix the sales problem, was convinced that their problem was that their salespeople were terrible. Convinced. And so when I started working with them, I found out they're not great, but they're not terrible. But I did find out that their general manager was terrible. And he was a very nice person and all, but he was a terrible leader. And there was all kinds of issues, including morale and everything else that went along with this. And that was the problem. And when that problem got fixed, then everything else got better. And so that's how you find out why they think it's going on, and then you dive in and you come to the real reason or reasons.
Let's take it, you know, that really covers the example of teams, and sometimes it's one person that it can affect and have a domino effect on not just individuals but business. But let's take it a step farther as well, and let's say for those solo entrepreneurs who you had mentioned, you know, will say a lot of times of, I'm just not a good closer, I don't want to be salesy. I have said those things myself sometimes before I really started honing in on my sales technique and getting out of my own way about it. what do you think tends to be the most like pushback for them from themselves on leveraging that as the excuse? Is it not being equipped to necessarily doing it, getting out of their own head? Is there certain like areas that tend to need more focus on than others? What do you find, especially right now, is going on?
When people go into business for themselves, or they get into a franchise or something like this, that they have an area of genius that's their own. And this is why they went into this business. They went into this business to help others with what they do, with whatever the services they're offering or the products or both. And the last thing they think about is selling. And it's very rare to find anybody that opens their doors and people are piling in. They've done everything right to get their business set up, and they've done all the things. And it's because, oh my God, we have to sell something. And many times your best friends who say, oh yeah, we're going to be your first customers and we're going to bring all these people, and then you open your doors and you don't see anybody. And that happens. And so it's that they don't have any skills in this area. And it's not about being introverted or extroverted or an ambivert. It has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with the lack of skills, because they've never had to use them before, or they weren't conscious that they were using them in the past. And this is a really big challenge because there's a total lack of confidence. And then what happens as a result of that is when they meet people, they just start throwing up about what they do right at the people they're talking to. They haven't asked the question. They have no idea what the needs are or anything else. I've just experienced this with somebody this morning before this recording. And when you get them to relax and help them with asking questions and listening, and active listening, it makes a huge difference. And then they could get into their area of genius. Mm-hmm. And then the sales come easier. Sales are not easy anyways, but you could definitely make it easier on yourself. And you're going to have to if you're in business.
Now, one thing you just said there as well is sales don't come easy. And I think right now, in the day of social media and where some businesses are standing between AI and just all these things, so many businesses want sales. And you hear so many of these sponsored ads or people out there of like, we can get you sales. We can close your sales, or all this stuff around sales. Why do you feel there's been, I'll say, the golden ticket, people trying to wave that golden ticket in front of small business owners and entrepreneurs, whether they're solo or not, that makes them feel like, okay, this should be the easy route. Why isn't this coming easy? When you are correct, it's a level of skill set and getting comfortable with it and feeling secure and all these different things while having the conversation.
Yeah, so let's just focus on quality people with quality advertising, not the people with a little less integrity. Okay, so let's focus on the positive folks. So one of the mistakes here is it's a little bit of panic that happens, and you're looking for something to help, and you don't know. And I've made plenty of my own mistakes in my own business. So all the experiences that I like to use to help others aren't because they were all positive experiences. I've had my own negative, experiences and made my own mistakes. But one of the areas that's a fallacy is with marketing. And for marketing folks who are listening, hang with me here, you're going to be happy. So it is not marketing's job to make sales. Marketing's job is to build awareness and generate leads. It's up to sales to make sales. So a quick story is I was in a meeting one time, and there was a small business, there's several small businesses there, but one of the owners got up and he said, my marketing company failed me. They brought me 60 qualified leads. Now, this was qualified by the owner's definition, not the marketing companies. They brought me 60 qualified leads, and we got no business from it. And he fired that marketing company. Any other small business in there would be hugging that marketing company and giving them more and more things to do because they brought in 60 qualified leads. And I went to him afterwards. I didn't say anything during the meeting. I didn't call him out in a meeting, but went to him and asked him about what was going on. And he said, yeah, he goes, I said, tell me about your sales organization. He goes, well, we don't have one. And we don't do this. I said, well, 60 qualified leads and you close none of them, that's the sales problem. So when marketing people say they're going to do all this stuff and they're going to generate this activity, and if they're 100% successful in doing this for you, or maybe you have a calling campaign for people to help find you leads, and it's a really good company, and they're going to bring in all these people. And if they bring in all these people and you don't have the capacity to follow up, that's one issue. The other one is, and if you don't have the skills to follow up, then all this positive stuff was a waste of money. Mm-hmm. And not only that, it's worse, Olivia. How could it get worse? Thanks for asking. I'll tell you. Here it is. It gets worse because now you have a negative reputation and now you're getting negative referrals. And what that means is you don't know how many opportunities you're losing because people say, hey, did you talk to so-and-so or go see that person? You say, yeah, we were really interested, but they didn't follow up or they didn't follow up right or they didn't do something here and they never call. So you don't know how many calls you're actually losing because of your inability to follow up, because you were overloaded or you didn't have a good skill at that. And that's really dangerous. But people go after this magic, as you said, these golden tickets, thinking it's going to be the end all to everything. And it is not. It is a portion of what you need to do.
And I love how you brought up, that clarity as well. And not only the example, but how you started it off of like, what is marketing jobs and what is sales jobs? Because there's so many times I get on calls with people as a podcast consultant and helping people get on globally ranked podcasts or starting and growing their own. And then they go to me, okay, well, just for like clarity, like I'm going to make this investment and how quickly can I get sponsors or how quickly can I get clients? And I say, listen, most people are going to tell you out the gate, a date, what the expected ROI will be. I said, that's all BS. I'm like, I'm going to tell you right now, anyone who tells you that is lying to your face to get you to feel like you've gotten that golden ticket. I say, it is exposure. It's authority. You're getting leads because every podcast, Phil, you're a guest on this podcast right now. Everyone who listens to my podcast and this episode is a lead for you, right? It helps in all these different avenues to not only generate leads now, but down the road and get authority and trust and network. And I could go on, but I'm like, all of those things compound to then be able to make a sale. But if you go into it being like, oh, I'm going to make X amount of dollars from this or that, I go, also, like, there's no way of saying whether you're going to make those X amount of dollars in 24 hours or 24 months. So, like, they could come 24 months from now as well, right? And, like, understanding that when you go into the room, so expectations are set, but then also you can have those transparent conversations as well.
Right, and I'm glad you brought up this podcast and what you're doing because it is a really good example. So for me here, do I have full expectation that, Olivia, that you're going to be this magic and you're going to bring in all these people? By the way, saying yes and actually having it happen, that would be fantastic. But the reality is that there's going to be somebody that's going to come from this, and I always say it just takes one. But to make it long term, you have all these guests, you record many, many podcasts. You don't have the bandwidth to help even a small percentage of them for the long term keep going in and out. That is my responsibility as the guest here, is to leverage this time with you and take these quality pieces and put them up on my own social media and let people know that they're there. And I could do this forever and ever and ever. This will last forever. It's out there on social media, right? And say, hey, I was on Achieving Success with Olivia, and guys should go look at that. Or I could take a soundbite from this that's relevant to somebody else and put that in to a mailing or whatever I want to do. So it's always up to us to put the work in. We have people like you with quality services that help us to get exposed. and you do what you do for the same reason. You want to help us, and by helping us, it helps you and everybody else around, and it helps the listeners. It's a win all the way through. But it's up to us to take this and go. And it's not fair to you or anybody else to say, "Oh, I was on Olivia saying she's got these followers all over the world, and I only heard from 8 countries, and there's still a lot more countries. You know, where were they?" Well, that's not Olivia's responsibility. It's not yours, right? So.
Yeah, it's just one of those things as well. And going back to the sales mindset is, one of the conversations I have, and we'll go off like being a guest on a podcast. I talk a lot about it's not just being a guest on a podcast, it's being a guest on the right podcast. Because I've had people come to me and they're like, I really don't see, a value, or I could just do it myself because paying someone with your expertise doesn't, and they have all these reasons on why it's a no. And I say to them, well, how's your experience been? Like, you're saying this, what has your experience been? And they're like, well, I haven't gotten sales from it. And I'm like, okay, but what are the conversations you're having? What are the conversations before you go into the episode you're having, during the episode, and then after? And they look at me like deer in headlights, or they'll say something about, the conversation wasn't impactful. And I'll stop and I say, okay, well, tell me about that, right? And it then leads into, well, I was on this sport podcast and I'm a financial guy, so we really didn't get into the financial stuff. And that's really why, what I want to speak about. And I this conversation really did happen recently. And I stopped and I said, so you're telling me you're not having the conversations you want to have, and you want to now do X, Y, Z with, when you're reaching out to hosts to make sure you have that. But you were on a sports podcast, and that was like one of 3 he did. And they were all, he's like, yeah. And I go, so they weren't the right podcast for the conversation you want to have. And so, it isn't just about being on a podcast or reaching out to, if on Facebook or doing this. It's reaching out to the right people and learning who are the right people. What are those goals? Having, even like you said, it's not always walking away and signing somebody, but leaving someone with information, because you never know when that sitting in their head goes light bulb moment. Okay, now I got to talk to that person. Well.
Correct. And being on a podcast for the sake of being on a podcast, you just said it exactly right. It is a two-way street. Olivia, you're very careful with who you bring on your show, so thank you for having me. And on the other side, I've learned to be very careful about whose shows I go on, because all exposure is not good exposure. And not that anything bad will happen, but it's a waste of time, because when you're on someplace where the questions are matching, are they even matching the value to their own listeners? You have to wonder sometimes, right? And so, look carefully about the topic area, but also listen to those people's podcasts ahead of time and make sure that you have some kind of feeling like, I could work with this person. This person could probably work with me, because there's got to be that gel there. So just saying, hey, I was on 100 podcasts, if 90 of them were no good, then you could have been doing something else, right?
Yeah.
And could we go back to something you said earlier, because I don't want your listeners to miss this, because you touched on something that's critical. And when you were talking about solopreneurs and people, and you talked about being in their own head, you made some kind of reference to that, and all my alert bells went off, because that is exactly what happens. So let's just talk about salespeople. Salespeople who are falling behind in the numbers, they're thinking about all the time, I got to make the sale, I'm going to lose my job, or I can't pay my bills, or whatever. Business owners are even worse in some ways. Oh, we got to get some revenue, and we have to get some revenue. While you're doing that, you're in your own head. That means you are not paying attention to the person you're talking with. So you have to get completely out of your own head and focus on them. Because when you're not totally focused on your prospect, they could feel that. They may not consciously realize it, but subconsciously they do. And you can't ask the proper questions. You should always be there like you're a multi-bazillionaire and you don't need this money. All you want to do is help. And when you go in with that attitude, you're going to get more business than you would have ever gotten the other way around, because you're totally focused on them. And they could feel it, and they know it, and they believe it because you're honest about it. But if you're worried about all this stuff in your own head, don't have the meeting, reschedule it, and come back when you can, because this is the key to what makes people trust. The old thing you mentioned, part of it today too, is the trust part. And it's the people have to know, like, and trust you. Well, they get to know you over time or through podcasts like this one. But to get to trust you, they have to understand that and believe that you're a quality source. And quality sources who are only thinking about themselves don't usually get trust.
And it's one of those things as well. Like, I walked into a room and I've sat there and I'm listening and I'm like, okay, this isn't going to be a fit. Like, they're not, budget wise or this or that. There's no way, even when you start diving deep into it, that it's just in alignment or, things like that. And it's okay to have those moments of like, okay, this isn't the right prospect or this isn't the right conversation. But to your point, having those right conversations, asking the right questions, and also following your gut sometimes. Like, I was recently on a call where the guy was just like very short and kind of rude. And I was like, okay. And we're going through, and I'm like, in my head, I'm going, I don't think I could. Like, it doesn't seem like they want to hear what I gotta say. Like, this isn't, and I didn't even end up pitching them because I said, that's not the client I want to work with. I want to work with someone who we can collaborate, that I can give the insight to. They're going to take that insight and either I'm going to implement it for them or they're going to implement it and this and that. And so sometimes, it's also having those moments where you're like, okay, no, or, client, you're going through objection handling and like the money's just not like, they're not going to buy, and having that realization in real time and go, okay, they're not going to invest today. Right. Give them some space, and this and that, and be like, okay, you know what? It is what it is. Like you said, feeling like you're the bazillionaire and you don't need the money, then you're coming off of like, okay, I'm going to move to the next person. I'm filling up. When you're ready, we'll, and this and that, and continue to touch base. But it's those moments, like you said, people feel the like emergency, like I'm hitting the emergency button. I just want the sale versus the like, okay, we're going to end it the way we're going to end it today. But that being said as well, you had mentioned earlier hitting that sales plateau. What's one tactical shift someone could do and make this week if they feel like they're hitting a sales plateau, whether it's they've gotten in their own way because they're doing conversations and hearing certain things continuously, and so they start backpedaling, whether it's they're trying to grow. Like, what is something we can all try to implement?
So here you go. I love this question. So you have to go back. It's really good if you have somebody you could talk to that you could talk to honestly, or they'll speak with you honestly, not just tell you what you want to hear, or not just be totally negative on everything. And for me, when I'm working with people in this area, it's helping them to remind themselves of what they did to get to where they're at now. Why were they successful? And if you're a sports fan out there, or if you're into dance or music or whatever it is, what do you do every year when a season starts or whatever? You start practicing the basic fundamentals of what you've been doing your whole life. Mm-hmm. And why do you do that? Because people forget the fundamentals if you don't. And then when you're not using the fundamentals, the tricky plays and all those things, they don't work, because you have to execute on the fundamentals. So to help people get over their plateau or where they're stuck, and they're already successful in this way, and they're just trying to get someplace new. One is where they're trying to get could be new altogether. It's an entirely different approach, where what they did to get where they are, this is a whole different audience. So like with one business that I was helping to get into, expand into law enforcement as a client. And in those areas, well, that's a much different approach than working with consumers at home. And it's a much different approach than working with somebody in a corporation. And so helping them to learn what the language is there and what you need to know, and then how you present and what your expectations should be. These are the things that you got to do. But once is I have to remind people that you've already been super successful. Do not change. It's just nuances. Some are bigger nuances than others, but it's nuances. But it's what made you successful there will make you successful here. And it sounds a little like mom and apple pie, Olivia, but it really is not. People forget. And then they start losing confidence because they keep hitting this wall that they can't get through. And when you remind them that they're really good at what they do, this is what happens. And one time there was, we live in a time, and I'm not making any political statements here in any way because it's happened over many presidents and different times with government shutdowns and things like that. But there was some extreme stuff recently where the entire departments were put out of business. And there was this one business that I was referred to, or they were referred to me. And when I got on with the owner was very upset, very distraught, big time, out of control. She had been in business for many years. She had a large organization. She was making millions of dollars of top-line revenue into her company and everything else. And then all at once, to no fault of her own, she's completely out of business forever. Terrible, right? And so here's the story, is now she's trying to go into business again and get started, not having any luck at all. She looked terrible on the video and everything else. And I decided, well, I was so concerned about her. I called her 2 days later and had her pop onto a video call with me because I just wanted to check and see how she is. And she looked better and she was smiling, I said. And it was such a different person, I almost didn't recognize what happened. She said, you got me my confidence back, and yesterday I got a client. And it was literally about that. It wasn't anything magic that I had done. It was just help her to realize that that company she built, which she did build, was because of her. And nothing has changed there. It's just she's got to start over.
And it's one of those things, too, as you used in that example and through speaking of, like, sometimes it's also about really just being like, okay, even though I've hit, these walls, right, these no's, or I'm just not ready to sign, which even for me, I kind of started hitting. And then I had a moment where I had like 6 calls within a few days back to back, and they all ended up not signing, being like, oh, let's circle back, let's do this. And I'm like, I didn't push any farther, right? I then took a step, and this was like, and I was like, why is that continuously happening? Where in the conversation am I letting that sit and just allowing it to be, just like, oh yeah, it is what it is. And then from that, after that moment of realization, get on the next call, don't do it. And it's like, okay, send me the invoice and pay. And so sometimes it also takes those moments, even when you've been doing it for a while, of, as you said, going back even further in the conversation of like going back to the fundamentals, but also giving yourself the grace to go like, okay, I need a moment of reflection here. What's going on? Why is this happening? Am I getting too comfortable with people around the holidays are planning for, 2025, and then I didn't follow up? Is it people, I gave people that because I knew they were going to be planning, and then it just kind of rolled into the new year where then I was like, okay, like when you're ready, come back. Like, what is those things happening that are then shifting how you're letting it play out call after call as well?
All right. Yeah. So one of the things that helps in these areas is, once again, we don't have time to dive today into all the asking question skills, but you definitely want to be doing that. But I have to tell all of you out there that if you're in a sales call and you are not taking notes, then you are not in the sales call. Because I don't care how important this is to you, that you think you're going to remember the details, even the ones that are not that complex, you are mistaken. You will not. And this is what's important. It's not about the price. It's not about the features. It's not about, how nice you look or you don't look. It's not about any of that. It's about what they tell you. And that's where you're going to be closing on that. And but if you don't have those notes that you could easily refer back to, and they're not in some kind of organized way. By the way, this is not some intuitive process, and it's practice, 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 and so you have to get this done. And by the way, when you're taking notes in a sales meeting, even on video, your prospect knows that you're taking notes, and that tells them that you are listening to them. And so, if you have a pen or an electronic tablet like I do, I always hold this up and I show it, say, when I'm looking down, I'm taking notes, I'm paying attention, I'm not doing something else. It's because they can't see you. If you're in person, they could see you doing this. But so that is a very positive thing to happen because they are measuring you all the time, consciously or subconsciously. And you could be nowhere near the lowest price and get business all of the time because they trust you, because the problem that you're trying to solve for them is really important to them. And it could be a career maker, a business maker, a life changer for them. So they're not going to, well, some people you can't help, but they're not going to say, oh, okay, well, I only want to be 10% successful, not 100%, right? So.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, and I love, I'm thinking too, for me personally, in all my meetings, I always have a note taker going because there might be something I miss, right? Something I say that I don't observe, but later on, whether we start working together, this or that I can go back and be like, oh, wait, was that brought up? Let me check this. They might have said something. So I use that, but I even if you're using that, going okay, I will be taking notes, right? Because that consciously
Right.
and being there and jotting stuff down.
Right. So the note takers are great. And I'll tell you, I'm a very big advocate of them. There's always a warning. Please don't give everybody who's on your email chain access to that recording automatically. Make that a manual thing because sometimes you'll say something that will be misinterpreted. And Murphy's Laws is always if something can be happen negatively, it will. And even if it wasn't intended to be, right? So, but here's the thing. So when I'm on a business call, like with you, Olivia, if we were on a call and I've got my note taker, I've given my note taker and my AI a name. It's Nova. Comes from my astronomy hobby, everybody. So, and I will tell people, I said, oh, Nova's here taking notes for me. And then if you say something, then I'll call it out. I'll say, hey, Nova, Olivia said this. This is really important. Please remind me of this. And the AI gets that, and the people enjoy this. They will even talk to the note taker sometime. And it's a fantastic technology. It's a disruptive technology, and when used right, it's just tremendous because you can never take notes at the quality of the note taker, but you can also use it to make it even better, to your points exactly, what you're talking about here. So it's okay for you to interact with the note taker because once again, the people are saying, boy, you really got this. And when it comes back, they're going to say, yeah, you didn't do this. Your Nova did it, right? Yeah. I said, yeah, but I'm going to take credit. So
what is the biggest thing when people are having sales calls that you have found they miss asking that additional question or kind of stop? Is it in the objection handling? Is it throughout the process? Where do you find that most people, especially if they're solo entrepreneurs or small business or just not comfortable doing sales calls, where they kind of knock themselves up against the wall, if that makes sense?
Okay, so this is not sales 101, everybody. So don't feel bad if I say something that you haven't heard or executed before. This is graduate level stuff. But here it is, because this is key. What Olivia just asked is key. They get hung up on something that the customer was looking for, and the customer says, oh, but your service, you guys don't do this, or this product, it doesn't have this particular function. And then they go, well, yeah, I don't. And then they're done. And where they miss, Olivia, is they stop right there and they can say, okay, let me ask you this question. First, acknowledge them. It's part of the process. Acknowledge them, say, you're right. It doesn't, or we don't, in this way. What I would like to know is, what do you do with this that you're asking about? And why do you do it? What do you do? And just let them talk. Shut up. I tell everybody shut up because people don't remember me saying be quiet and listen. They remember me telling them shut up and let them talk. So shut up and let them tell you everything. And then then it's all about curiosity, sincere curiosity. And when they come back and they tell you, well, this is what we do, and you say, well, tell me why that's important. So I understand. And it's not about necessarily going back and having this service added to your bag of tricks or having this capability put into your product. It's learn what it is they want to do. And you say, well, tell me what it does and why that works for you. And tell me, if you were to enhance it, what would you want it to do that it doesn't do today? And you're taking notes because this is key. And then when you say, oh, I get it. So you're right. We don't do this. However, this is what you want to accomplish. Is that correct? And what would that look like when it's accomplished? Oh, so this is fantastic. So what you really want to do is you want to have this happen. And they say, that's right. So it's not about the button that's not there or the service that's not in our price book. It's about you want to do this, right? Well, what if I could show you a way that'll do this and the thing you're not able to do, and it's going to be even more efficient? How fast would you like me to show you this? And they come back, well, tell me, what is it? And you go into this. So no, they could have had that business because they maybe just had a different way of getting there and maybe even a better way of getting there. But they never, because they froze when the person pointed out that you don't have the purple button. You only have green and yellow. And the purple button did way more, but they never got that far. So this is a difference maker of big times. And whether it's an objection handling or just during your regular questioning and you're finding out what's important to them, do not panic if there's something you don't have. And by the way, the thing that they're talking about may have about, out of 100% of what's important to them, it may be 1%. And now you've focused 99% of your conversation on something that's only 1% important to them because you got hung up. So there's all kinds of things. And it goes on and on and on.
Well, Phil, this has been a really impactful conversation. I feel like we've covered different things and we could keep talking about sales because, as you mentioned, there's many aspects we haven't covered today. But Phil, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Well, thank you very much for asking. So you could go to my website and go to the contact me page, which is phil@beentherecs.com. That's BEENTHERE, C as in consulting, S as in services. Or just send me an email. I love getting emails, phil@beentherecs.com.
Well, and thank you, Phil, for all of your insight today.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so thrilled that you asked me to be here and accepted me to be here, and I hope that I gave your listeners some tips that they can implement today.
I mean, you even gave me things to think about and implement as I have sales calls later today. So I will say, yes, you did, and definitely a win. And a few of those key takeaways from today's conversation include high impact brings out the reasons behind the question. So ask the high impact questions. Phil brought this up early on in the conversation, but also throughout our conversations today. It isn't just about asking a question. So asking about the right question and then going deep on that, asking the follow-up questions, like even just brought up in the example he was using of like, okay, well, why is that important? What do you do with that? If you could do something like this, what would that mean? Because then that gives you clarity. As he said, don't get hung up because you don't have the purple button. You just have the green and the yellow and all the other colors. Ask the right question. Ask those high impact questions that will help you make the sale, but also connect with people. And I also love how Phil brought up, emphasize that you're taking notes. There's a portion of this, even in examples that Phil mentioned today, that is body language, that is, understanding what you're doing. He makes it a point to say, I'm going to be taking notes on this call today. If you use a note taker, emphasizing that so that they know you're paying attention, that you're absorbing what they're telling you instead of just thinking about the dollar signs that might be in front of you. As well as it is marketing's job to make, it is not marketing's job to make sales. It is their job to make leads. And I think a lot of times, and I'm so happy Phil brought this up, that gets misunderstood. Even the term leads or lead generation, I think, gets misunderstood as that will be a conversion into a client. But what that really means is the exposure. How many people are you touching that you might have not touched before? How many people are coming into your pipeline? And so when, as Phil mentioned, being able to separate those two buckets are really important in identifying, is it a sales problem? Is it a marketing problem? And if it is a sales problem, what is the sales problem? Is it your pipeline of doing the follow-ups, like Phil said? Is it a general manager, right? And a people problem. What is that problem? And then is it yourself? Are you getting in your own way during the conversations? As well as, what did you do to get where you are? I love how Phil brought that up as a center point in telling yourself, what are you good at? Where have you come from? What are you doing? And getting that relaxed mindset to be able to show up in a powerful way to that sales call. And last but not least, and this is a challenge I'm going to leave all of you with as well today, keep practicing the fundamentals. I'm going to, go back to some of those fundamentals. Even today, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to start going back and practicing those so that they don't get out of practice and I end up, sabotaging something consciously or unconsciously, but having those in your back pocket all the time. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Phil Whitebloom. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.